Hi, everyone. We hope you guys are having a wonderful day out there. Thank you so much for joining us today. It is Mr. Tiska with you once again. And once again, I'm joined by Mrs. Kraft. Mrs. Kraft, how are you?
Oh, I'm ready to lead this discussion.
I'm ready to listen to this discussion. We also have Ms. Hopp with us. Ms. Hopp, how you doing?
I'm ready.
Perfect. So today we're going to start Chapter 7, Section 1, Washington Leads a Nation. Now, the big idea for today, President Washington and members of Congress established a new national government.
And the main ideas that we're going to talk about are in 1789, George Washington became the first president of the United States. Congress and the president organized the executive and judicial branches of government, and America had high expectations for their new nation. Main idea number 1. In 1789, George Washington became the first president of the United States.
Yeah, so as we all know, Washington was the commander of the Continental Army during the American Revolution. But after the American Revolution, he actually decided to retire. And he went back home to Mount Vernon, Virginia, and he was just kind of enjoying retirement. But then once this new government was created, a lot of people wanted Washington to come back and lead the government. And he was actually convinced to come back and become the first president. Well, before that, they actually had to come up with a way to select the president. And that way was the Electoral College. So what happened was electors from 11 states that had passed the Constitution met in January 1789 to vote. And they all picked Washington. When in doubt, you always pick Washington. So they selected Washington to be president, and they selected John Adams to be his vice president. And Washington's wife, Martha Washington, is going to become the nation's first lady. And what she did is she actually entertained at a lot of social events and did set up a lot of meet and greets for the president as well.
So, bouncing off what Mr. Tiska said about Martha Washington, you have this new idea of women in the new nation. So many believe that women should play a greater role in the new nation than Martha Washington did. And by this, they meant like roles in government, roles in society, and not just what women were known for. And they weren't so happy with the view that they had. So many hoped that women would be able to receive an education because few families provided education for their daughters, and they focused more on the sons. And most women in the early republic just managed their household, worked hard inside or outside the home to support families, and they wanted women to have a greater role in society and in government. Main idea 2. Congress and the president organized the executive and judicial branches of the government.
So at the time, there was no How to Be the President for Dummies book invented. So George Washington had a basic idea of, okay, I'm going to run this country, but oh my goodness, how am I going to do it? So he starts to set up some different things that will serve as precedents. Now, a precedent is an example that other people follow. One of those amazing precedents that he sets up is he knows that he doesn't know everything. And a person that's really smart surrounds themselves by people that are as smart or smarter than them that can help them do things they can't do by themselves. Now, this amazing group of advisors is called the cabinet. And he has probably the best cabinet ever. You guys have all become familiar with the name Alexander Hamilton. Alexander Hamilton, Alexander Hamilton. Anyway, he is a mathematical genius. He knows exactly what has to happen with the money to make the country a success. And he becomes the first head of the Treasury Department. Now, the heads of these departments are called secretaries. It's not like your school secretary who takes notes. That's just the name of the person in charge. Now, Thomas Jefferson, who had spent a ton of time in Europe and hobnobbing with the French and hanging out over there, becomes the first Secretary of State. And the job of the Secretary of State is to make sure that we get along with all the other foreign nations. And then the last person is Henry Knox, and he becomes the Secretary of War. Now, we no longer have a War Department. Now we have something called the Department of Defense. So George Washington is surrounded by these three amazing men, and they're the ones that are going to help him to run the executive branch. Judicial branch, Mr. Tiska?
Thank you, Mrs. Kraft. Now, with the judicial branch, Congress passed the Judiciary Act of 1789, which set up the federal court system. See, here was the problem. In the Constitution, in terms of the judicial branch, all it really talks about is the Supreme Court. And Congress knew that the national court system needed to be bigger than that because they had seen what happened under the Articles of Confederation. So they created the Judiciary Act to create the three levels of federal courts and to define their powers. So the Judiciary Act actually set up district courts, which were the trial courts of the national court system, and the Circuit Court of Appeals. Just so you guys know, the president is the one who nominates federal judges. So any judge in the national court system gets nominated by the president. So the Judiciary Act of 1789 just really helped establish the national court system of the judicial branch.
Main idea 3. Americans had high expectations of their new government. So the United States in 1790 had 4 million people in it. And that's a big jump from where we started. So most were farmers who wanted fair tax laws and the right to settle Western lands. So basically people wanted the government to help them out, but they didn't want them to get too involved. So merchants, laborers, craftspeople wanted help with their businesses, but they didn't really want to be told what to do. So the first capital was New York City, which is so close to us. And this was a big trade center and economic hub for the nation. And at that time, about 33,000 people were living in New York City, and this was growing very, very rapidly. And we'll talk more about that in a later chapter.
Yes, we will. But I believe that's it for us today. Mrs. Kraft, anything else you want to add?
No, I hope everybody has a great day.
Ms. Hoff, anything?
Nope. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Have a fantastic day, guys. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.